Living Local Carolina with Katie Turner. Local trends, shopping, dining, and more. This is Living Local Carolina.
If you joined with us last month, you may recognize our special guest today. We are joined by Doug Lineberry and Gilliam, who are partners at Burr Forman, and they talked a little bit with us last month, answered some legal questions for us, and we had so many questions from viewers at home that we brought them back again today. So thank you both so much for being here with me.
Thank you, August. Thank you.
And for folks at home that may not be familiar, there are lots of different types of lawyers. Will you tell folks at home, I guess, a little bit about your specific specialty and then what initially made you interested in becoming a lawyer?
Sure. I'm an intellectual property attorney, patents, trademarks, copyrights. Essentially, I help clients protect their inventions and their branding.
Yeah.
I led into it just because I kind of always wanted to be one.
Yeah.
I'm real shy and I don't talk much. but it's one of those things to where it fits me.
Yeah.
I like what I do. I like helping companies protect themselves.
Yeah.
I like helping them be able to brand themselves. I like being able to help them basically guard their property against people who shouldn't be touching it.
Yeah, and that's a great point. What about you, Jim?
So what I do is I'm a litigation attorney, which means I go to court and do the things that you see on TV. Maybe not quite as dramatic, but I do those things. And so that's a big area of my practice. But I also practice in employment law, or that's an aspect of my litigation practice. And I help employers just on advice and counsel issues. So those are issues that aren't necessarily in court yet, but we're trying to work through issues to make sure that we don't end up in court.
Yeah.
And I do a bunch of work also about drafting contracts and things of that nature. In terms of what drew me to the legal profession, I wasn't one of these kids who had it all figured out. I know a lot of kids know what they want to be, especially in our profession.
Yeah.
They knew that they wanted to be a lawyer, from out of the womb. I wasn't
Right.
that way. I went to college and just sort of figured out what I was going to do and thought I had some ability in terms of like writing, and I really like to speak. So I thought that being a lawyer would be a good fit, and also was really drawn to the idea of being able to help people.
Yeah, and I love that, you mentioned that you kind of figured it out later and then was drawn to it. For folks at home who, may be interested, young adults that are thinking maybe becoming a lawyer is for me, what is some advice that you would give to people that are looking to start a journey in the legal profession?
And I'll tell you to do something I didn't do, go hang around a firm.
Yeah.
See what it's like being there. We have summer associates, we have undergrads that come through, hang out. Tell these firms, hey, I'd like to, even if you just shadow somebody for a couple days, go see what it's like. Get your toes into it and at least get a base understanding of what's out there.
Yeah.
No, I think connecting with a lawyer is a good way to start. So that way you know what a lawyer actually does. Because our profession is one of those that is a little over-dramatized. So you see a lot of it on TV.
Yeah.
And what you see on TV is not representative of what we do on a day-to-day basis. So, going to law school is a big endeavor in a lot of ways. It takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
And it's expensive. So I think before someone embarks on that career, they should know what they're getting into, and they should know that they have a real passion for it, because I think what makes someone a good lawyer is to have a real passion for it.
For sure. And I know there are a lot of benefits and great things that you guys get to do on a daily basis. You get to help people that are in a time of need. What are some of the challenging things about being a lawyer?
Sure. You're kind of constantly on.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to juggle a lot of balls at once.
Yeah.
You might be thinking, hey, it's Monday, I'm going to come in and do ABC. I promise you there are plenty of Mondays when Jim and I never see ABC.
Yeah.
And so, but you have to be very good at being able to switch tacks, because when a client calls and needs something, it's a dumb thing to be like, time out, I wasn't working on this today, I'm going to work on something else, because it's important to them.
Yeah.
And they want that handled.
Jim, what about you?
Yeah, so there's challenging things about every profession,
Yep.
and I don't want to sound like, the legal profession is so challenging, because I get to interact with a bunch of people who are in a bunch of different professions, and
Right.
I find a lot of professions that are more difficult than ours.
Yeah.
But I think time management is difficult.
Yeah.
The advent of technology has made things a little more difficult
Yeah.
with cell phones. You do feel as though you are available 24/7, which is challenging,
For sure.
because like Doug and I both are people, we have families.
Yeah, have lives outside too.
Sure,
When we
yeah.
come back from our break, we will get to talk with Doug and Jim a little bit more and answer some of the questions that we've received from you. Welcome back to the September Living Local Community Panel. You can tell today that we are here because we love our lawyers, and we are joined by two very special lawyers, Doug Lineberry and Jim Gilliam, who are here today to kind of talk to us a little bit about what their job is like, and then also give us a little bit of information and answer some questions from you guys. So, Doug, I will start with you. For the folks at home, can you give us a little bit of an overview of your scope of law and some of the cases and questions that you answer on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. I'm an intellectual property attorney. I help companies with their marketing. I help them with their inventions, patents, trademarks, copyrights, trade secrets, assorted documents that go with that.
Yeah.
Mainly what I help folks do is to protect their IP.
Yeah.
Some things we deal with daily are registering that intellectual property, whether it's a patent application, trademark application, copyright registration, also enforcement actions. You know, what if someone's using my trademark? What if someone's infringing on my patent? So we help clients conduct those analyses to find out, hey, if there is a problem, what are our steps forward?
Wonderful. And I think, you know, kind of even explaining how important that type of law is. I know that's something we talked about when you were here with us last month, that there are a lot of small business owners that when you think trademark, you think these big, huge companies and corporations, but it's things, you know, that a lot of local small businesses can benefit from as well, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, it really is the key to all American business. 95% of it's small, folks. The big ones are the rarity. It is the small businesses that really are the ones that are the lifeblood, and they need these protections just as much as the multinational. Maybe more so, because to them, your market share has to be protected at all costs. And if someone starts infringing on a small business, sometimes a small infringement to them, which might be something a big one would ignore, can be something that can actually harm the business.
Yes, for sure. And so now we are going to dive into some of our questions that we received from viewers. So earlier in the month, we put out on Facebook with a landing page to our website where viewers at home could submit questions to Doug and Jim and get a little bit of their level of expertise. So one of our first questions for today is from Matthew, and he said, how can I find out if someone else uses a trademark that I'm interested in registering?
Matthew, that's an awesome question. A lot of folks don't ask that question and then get in trouble, or I have to call and pop a balloon. You can go to ust.gov. There's a system called TESS, name of a pretty girl, but also an acronym for a Trademark Electronic Search System. You can go on there, you can check your trademark. You can type it in. I'm not saying this is a professional search, I'm not saying to rely upon it, but you can go do a good thumb up, thumb down, is my mark there. If you see thumbs up, it's not there, contact an attorney. You will want a professional search done to make certain it's clear.
For sure. And I know a lot of times with trademarks, even things that maybe sound the same as something else but aren't the exact. So that's a good reason as to why, you know, not to just go by a test search result, but, you know, that's a great place to start and then allow people to kind of contact and really take those steps to move forward. Our next question is from Mackenzie. Mackenzie asked, who has more rights if two people are using the same mark and neither one is registered?
Mackenzie, awesome question. That's called senior user. And it really is the oldest mark wins. And it also depends on where you're using it. So we need to look at what have you done, how have you advertised, where's your client base at. That's how we figure out what your spread is, but we're probably going to look at, most importantly, when did you start? If you're years ahead of someone, and again, we've talked about this on this segment and the previous one, you want to register those, you want to protect those trademarks. I know small businesses think, oh gosh, you know, it's a big business thing. It's really not. It's a critical protection for a small business. So being the oldest is fine, but having a federal trademark's better.
Yeah, perfect. And I love that you even mentioned then, you know, it's not just who's the oldest, but the ways that they are using it with technology and social media. I mean, you can be a small business in South Carolina and be all over the place. So that's really important in the grand scheme of things too, and another reason why you should take that first step and go ahead and get registered. And then our final question is from Thomas, who asked, what steps can I take if someone else is using my trademark?
Yeah, Thomas, first thing I'll tell you is a very nice church language. Just, hey, will you please stop? I think that's a good thing. I encourage my clients to do it all the time. You notice I said church language. I don't want hostile. I don't want aggressive. I don't want profane. Just reach out to them. Sometimes this can be resolved business to business. You won't even need an attorney. And notice it's an attorney saying you might not need an attorney.
Right.
If they tell you to pound sand, call. You know, Jim and I will be more than happy to help you deal with that. We'll be more than happy to look at this situation and tell you, hey, what are our options? What are our risks? What are our advantages? But also police those marks, Thomas. You're asking the right thing. If you see somebody touching your stuff or using your mark, do not allow it to happen. You need to try to stop it immediately.
Doug, thank you so much for answering these questions. And we will be talking to Jim a little bit and answering questions from him as soon as we come back from the break. Welcome back to the Living Local Carolina Financial Friday Community Panel. And this month we are talking with our lawyers. It is Love Your Lawyers month on the panel here for us. We are joined by Doug Lineberry and Jim Gilliam, who have been giving us all of the legal advice and then giving us kind of a behind the scenes scoop as to what it is like to be a lawyer. So we'll start with, there are lots of different types of law. Jim, if you'll give us kind of an overview of some of the different kind of cases that you work on and the scope of your day-to-day.
Sure. So, roughly what I do is I, do what people probably think lawyers do, and I go to court. And I would say that's the litigation aspect of what I do.
Yeah.
So there's that aspect, and there's a broad variety of type of cases that I represent clients on. Some of them are employment related, some are not.
Right.
And some are, as it relates to a business versus a competitor as well. So that's one aspect of what I do, sort of the go to court aspect. And the other aspect of what I do is try to keep people out of court.
Yeah.
So that means that we try to make sure that the companies that I work for, that we're engaging in smart practices and we're, we have good contracts and that we're taking actions that are going to keep us out of potential legal liability.
Perfect. And I know earlier, we had mentioned that that's one of the great things about, having a lawyer at the very beginning of starting a business or reaching out to a lawyer before things get to the point where you feel like you need a lawyer. So I think that's super important that you kind of mentioned that is also a big scope of the things that you do on a day-to-day basis is taking all those precautionary steps to make sure businesses aren't having to go to court.
That's right. The existential problem that a business can have from a legal aspect is to have a filed lawsuit against them.
Yeah.
I would submit to you that there are probably a lot of different problems that happen before that.
Right.
So what you want to do if you have a keen eye, if you're a company, is try to catch those issues early so you can try to keep yourself out of a lawsuit. Lawsuits are, of course, time-consuming, and they're also expensive.
For sure. And just like Doug, before the break, we have several questions that were submitted from members and viewers online for Jim. So our first question is from Nate. Do employers need to provide an employee/worker with any written terms and conditions?
Okay, that's a good question, and the answer is yes.
Yeah.
So there's actually a terms of employment notice that the South Carolina Labor Licensing and Regulation, or LLR, has disseminated. And it's free to any employer, and all employers should be using that. It's a free service too. You don't need a lawyer to do that.
Right.
And what you do with that terms of employment notice is you put employees on notice about basic things. How much are you getting paid?
Yeah.
When's payday? Do you have sick and vacation time? Things of that nature. But having it in writing is key.
Perfect. And then our next question is from Taylor. Do employers need a reason to dismiss an employee?
Oh, so that's an interesting question. So, in South Carolina, whenever I tell people that I practice in employment law, the first thing people tell me is that, this is the at-will state, or there's a right-to-work state.
Yeah.
Well, in South Carolina, it is an at-will state, meaning generally you can terminate somebody for any reason or no reason, but the catch is it can't be an unlawful reason, right? So if you're an employer, you can terminate someone for any reason you want to, really, so long as there's a business purpose for it, right? If somebody's not coming to work on time, or if they're not doing what they're supposed to, those are business reasons why you would terminate somebody, but you can't terminate someone for a protected reason, like their race, color, religion, sex, things of that nature.
Well, and I think that's really important that you touch on, because like you said, that's something that you hear common, I feel like is a very common misconception with employees and employers, to know kind of what the scope of that contains.
That's right.
Our next question is from Sam. What are maximum hours employees can work, and what breaks are they entitled to?
Okay, so the answer may surprise people. There actually is no maximum hour requirement.
Yeah.
Theoretically, your employer could make you work as many hours as your employer deemed necessary, but I think the way the law looks at that is to say, well, that's not going to happen. And one of the ways we know it's not going to happen is for employees who are non-exempt. If they work more than 40, they're going to be entitled to overtime, which is time and a half of their regular rate of pay. So that typically works as a disincentive for employers to overwork employees, because it ends up being really expensive.
Right.
And the people who are salaried, basically are probably going to be unwilling to work that type of schedule.
For sure.
There's actually no laws either regarding mandatory breaks. You can see some sort of collective bargaining with that sometimes, but absent that, there's no rules.
Perfect. And then our final question is from Madison. Are employers obligated to investigate reports of workplace harassment?
Well, they should, is I think the best answer to say there. It may depend on how many employees you have. You as an employer should look into that and see if you can eliminate it and see if you can't solve that problem.
So thank you both for joining me, and thank you guys at home for submitting questions and joining us on today's Financial Friday Community Panel.